The UN finances initiatives related to misinformation management or supports government funding and third-party development of censorship tools and technologies, correct?
Yes.
And you're aware that U.S. taxpayer dollars have been used by the UN to develop and implement an AI-assisted fact-checking tool to label speech as misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation, toxic or hate speech, correct?
Yes, sir. Very disturbing.
In fact, in 2021, the U.S. gave the UN Development Program $190 million in taxpayer dollars. And iVerify, what they've developed, has been tested in 5 countries: Kenya, Honduras, Liberia, Sierra Leone, and Zambia. And it's intended to expand to more countries. Does that concern you?
Extremely.
The UN has also partnered with other players in the censorship industrial complex, including CrowdTangle, a Facebook meta-connected fact-checking tool. Meaden got $250,000 from the National Science Foundation for identifying and countering misinformation on closed messaging platforms. An international fact-checking network, IFCN, a grant and fellowship-making organization to help fact-checkers, solution providers, and other eligible organizations launch new and innovative fact-checking programs and initiatives. Do you see iVerify as part of a larger global trend towards centralized control over information?
Yeah, and we didn't have a chance to get to it, but USAID has been pushing digital IDs that would tie people's bank accounts to their social media profiles. I mean, it's out of Black Mirror. I mean, the idea would be that they'd be able to police and potentially debank you for something that you said online. It's extremely disturbing, and I was just kind of shaking my head because after 2 years of this, we just keep discovering more censorship initiatives hidden away in different agencies, the UN, USAID. I mean, it's madness.
It's terrifying. You agree. Programs like iVerify and iVerify, the one you just mentioned as well, could be weaponized by authoritarian governments to silence dissent. And you've seen
by our government
this as well.
Yeah.
Well, of course, by our government as well. And
we've got ones that can see. Welcome everybody to today's show. What you just heard spoken about in Congress is actually what the ultimate plan is. I'm a little bit surprised that they even brought attention to it, but I guess while they're doing all of this quote-unquote exposing of the USAID, the majority of people won't hear what the actual agendas are that are being exposed. They're just going to continue to hear about how we need to restructure the government. But talking about the digital ID and the digital ID connected to your bank account, connected to your social media account, these are things I've exposed many times over the year. And we have advocacy groups which are led by the big banks, which aren't really advocacy groups because they're the ones who are pulling the strings, who are calling on the Trump administration to speed up digital IDs. And you heard him mention Black Mirror, which is something and a show that I've exposed many times over the years because there's probably no show out there that reveals what the agendas are with technology and the horror that is to come with technology in the future, more so than Black Mirror does. Here's a clip of what the digital ID, for anybody out there that doesn't know, that hasn't seen this clip before. Here's what it looks like, a world run with a digital ID through your technology.
It's great to see you. You too. House pancakes. He's hilarious.
I am so sorry. That flight is canceled.
No. So when is the next flight?
Yeah, they're all kind of full. There's one standby seat on another plane leaving tonight.
Okay.
That's reserved for members of our Prime Flight program. You got to be a 4.2 or over to qualify.
Oh, I'm a 4.2.
I'm afraid you're actually a 4.183.
But it's so close.
There's just nothing I can do.
Christ, I mean, surely.
I'm going to have to ask you to moderate your language there.
Can you call the supervisor?
I cannot do that.
Can you just call the supervisor?
I cannot do that. Okay, that's profanity. We're zero tolerance on profanity.
I'm sorry. It's just...
Yeah, I have to serve the next customer.
Can you help me? I'm so sorry.
I've called security.
Oh, no, please don't do that. I'm a 5-starring you.
Issue, Your Honor?
Intimidation and profanity.
Oh, I was just trying to...
It's a temporary issue.
No.
The score reverts to normal in 24 hours.
No, but I need it now.
We recommend you avoid negative feedback at this time.
I'm on double damage.
Please, Remove yourself from the airport immediately.
So, of course, that looks like something that's not possible, right? It looks like something that could never, ever be allowed or implemented by the government, but in fact, it's already implemented in countries like China and coming to Australia soon. I've talked about the social media bans in Australia, where if you're 16 and under, you can't go on social media. And that's a wonderful thing. That's a great thing. In fact, we should all call for and demand the removal of social media in general for the betterment of society and mental health and people living wholesome, full lives. But of course, social media is leading to the demise of society. It is an addiction worse than any crack that is on this earth available to human beings, unfortunately, because we see how many people are addicted to social media. But eventually, the ban in Australia leads to a digital ID. The digital ID is the crucial element in this new world order. And the better identity in America, a blueprint for policymakers, is one of the so-called advocacy groups that is talking about the Trump administration bringing in this digital ID sooner than later. And if you read between the lines, you'll see how easily they'll be able to deceive people into a digital ID. Now, of course, they'll say, hey, we're not going to censor you with the digital ID. There's a bunch of things that make it important to have a digital ID, right? I've discussed this in the past. The border is a perfect example. The digital ID will be imperative for border security, which will make the sheeple want it more. That's all they'll need to hear. We'll be able to have a digital ID, which means you won't be able to cross without a digital ID. You'll get scanned. It'll get something that goes, that could be right up on top of the wall, and we'll be able to scan. Hey, we'll be able to scan the human being's DNA, so we won't have to worry about whether or not they're crossing the border or not. And these people will cheer for it. All it takes is a few more psyops. It's been quiet over the last couple of months, but a few more psyops about the border, about some young college girl getting killed by somebody who came across the border illegally. That's all it takes to make these people want what Big Brother wants for them already. So the Better Identity Coalition, the BIC, has sent a letter to the U.S. Department of Government Efficiency, known as DOGE, okay? Urging a new Trump administration to prioritize digital ID as a fundamental component of government efficiency and national security. And you could read between the lines of where this is going. The coalition said identity fraud is not just a problem affecting government benefit programs, but is a broader national security issue that impacts multiple industries and facilities, criminal activity on a global scale. They go on to say, BIC commended USDS's initial efforts to combat fraud in government benefits, but stressed that the issue extends far beyond that scope. Organized criminals in hostile nation states, including China and North Korea, have exploited weaknesses in digital identity infrastructure to steal billions of dollars, harming not just government agencies, but also financial institutions, healthcare providers, retailers, fintech firms, and cryptocurrency exchanges. These crimes do not only result in financial losses, they also fund human trafficking, drug smuggling, and even the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction. They will use those things to tickle people's ears to get them on board with the digital ID. They will say that it'll stop trafficking because humans will be tagged like cattle and sheep. Thus, they won't be able to go missing. But of course, the humans that they want to go missing will go missing because you'll never even know of their existence in the first place because they won't be putting the stories on the news to let you know of all of these missing children. The only time they do that is if they want you to know about it. And it goes on to say, to illustrate the urgency of the matter, BIC pointed to alarming statistics. The government's accountability office has estimated that identity fraud losses cost the U.S. government between $233 billion and $521 billion annually, with pandemic unemployment insurance fraud alone amounting between $100 billion and $135 billion. And you only hear the stories out there about the pandemic insurance fraud schemes that keep on happening because they want you to hear about it. They want you to keep saying, how are these people stealing so much money? They're stealing taxpayers' money. How are these people getting away? Well, they're getting away with it because there's a digital ID, right? They're figuring out how to manipulate the system. So while you could hear conservatives like the guy in the beginning talk in Congress about the horrors of a digital ID, which of course are true, eventually it'll be here. It just matters of how Donald Trump packages this, how it's marketed to the sheeple. Because if you're told it's a freedom ID instead of a digital ID, well, these suckers will be on board. Freedom ID? Yeah. Freedom ID, it's only for U.S. citizens. Nobody could travel, nobody could have it unless you are one, right? And of course, eventually this is all embedded. So one of the key things to remember is you'll hear stuff about 233 billion, 500 billion annually, right? At the same time, Trump is using $500 billion to create AI infrastructure. And that's exactly what this is for. It's for the digital ID. And they even go on to talk about, before I show you the horror that you need to see of how this works, because I know a lot of people out there don't understand how this works, and I'll show you in a minute so you can understand that this isn't a Republican thing, this isn't a Democrat thing, this is a human rights violation. This is the government telling you where you could spend, how you could spend, where you can go, where you can't go, and whether or not you'll be able to access your own bank account based on your behavior, based on things you question online. And right now, well, if you're a Democrat, I'm sure a lot of things you say online the government would be opposed to, right? If you're part of the MAGA sheeple herd, of course, everything you're saying right now lines up with the current regime that's in power. And the seesaw is going to continue until this is in place and human beings are forced to comply to whatever the government tells them, even if the government tells them that they have to sleep with so-and-so, marry so-and-so, eat so-and-so, you'll be forced into compliance. And Larry Fink has said it since day one. BlackRock's Larry Fink. It is about behavioral control. We are forcing behaviors. And this is how they force it. They force it by telling you, look, you literally will not be able to access your own money. You literally will not be able to move freely unless you behave the way that we tell you to. And that means when we come to your door with a ramrod, we expect you to bend over and allow us to shove it up your rectum. Because that's the only behavior we'll accept. You bowing down and conforming to whatever we say. If we say we're going to take your kids because they belong to the state, you're going to bow down and say yes. And if you complain online on social media that we came to your door and took your kids, well, guess what? Your social score is going to go so low that you can't even eat or have water for the rest of the month, so you'll die of natural causes. But it'll really be starvation and dehydration caused by Big Brother themselves. They go on to say in their closing remarks, BIC said, outdated paper and plastic identity credentials remain a major obstacle to modern security and efficiency. While a handful of states have introduced mobile driver's licenses, progress has been slow, and the government has largely focused on in-person use cases rather than the more urgent need for secure digital identity solutions. Things like that people will fall for, hook, line, and sinker. Oh, it's a outdated paper or plastic. They've already forced the majority of people into doing things online by removing the option to do things via paper and handwritten things, right? And we've seen, obviously, the digital licenses. That is a beginning point to get a digital ID. It is not the overall digital ID that they have planned for you. Because the digital ID, which most people will just go, oh, what's the big deal? I shop online, I travel, I don't have a boarding pass anymore, I'll just use my phone. They don't understand that the digital ID eventually is you. The gene editing that's going to be done, the digital ID is going to be embedded in you like blockchain. And that's what people need to pay attention to, but their brains can't they can't wrap their minds around what they're actually doing. So let me show you what life in China looks like. And if this doesn't look like absolute hell on earth, where you might as well be 6 feet under if you're living like this, then I don't know what does.
They're constantly monitored by facial recognition cameras that are able to instantly put a face to a name. Now the Chinese are also ranked, given a mark out of a possible 950 points. A score in the 700s is considered good. Around the 500 mark is not. For now, the number is a sort of bank credit rating, keeping track of everyone's spending habits.
I think being ranked is a good thing. A society has to have rules.
It forces us to be well behaved.
It may seem scary, but it's just like that here. We're used to it, and anyway, we don't have a choice.
But in an effort to keep all of its subjects in line, Beijing is taking the system a step further in 2020. It's aggregating data gathered by banks, private companies, and the state to rate if someone's a good or bad citizen.
By using the most data possible, the so-called big data, the system will play an important role in rebuilding a moral society.
The state will go over every detail of a person's life with a fine-tooth comb. Their financial situation, spending habits, career, even behavior on social media. Criticizing the government online or displaying outward signs of wealth is a no-no. On the other hand, praising the party or giving blood increases your social credit. Xiao Wen-Wang is a model citizen. She lives in Nanjing, a testing ground for social ranking. Married with a child, she has a job in a retirement home, no debts, and she wouldn't dream of jaywalking.
As a good citizen, I respect the rules of the road. If I didn't, I'd lose points on my social credit.
In theory, everything can be taken into account in the social score, even the most innocuous errands like supermarket shopping. When Xiao Wen-Wang makes an electronic payment, her purchases tell the state a lot about her. Buying cigarettes would count against her. On the other hand, nappies show she's an attentive mother. Beer could indicate alcoholism. She'd be better off buying water. In this pilot city of 8 million people, there are only 18,000 model citizens. For Xiao Wen-Wang, there are perks to be had, such as paying half price for the bus.
I get discounts for all public services, even at museums. And the library is free for me, thanks to my score.
A good score brings benefits, but people with low scores lose rights. The cinema names and shames people considered untrustworthy, plastering their details, even their addresses, across big screens.
It's a matter of principle. Those people have to be condemned.
Those people aren't honest, so they have to pay the price.
It's only right to pay your debts. You have to blacklist those that don't.
The Supreme Court has created a blacklist for so-called bad citizens, those whose ratings have dropped to zero. On it are companies, but also 23 million people to date. Among them is this journalist Liu Hu. He got a little too close to uncovering corruption among high-profile party members. After being sued for defamation by the subject of a story he'd written, he was blacklisted. But he only realized when he tried to buy a train ticket and was told he was banned from traveling.
That tells me I'm still on the blacklist.
Punished because he's been branded untrustworthy by the state.
Once you're blacklisted, you can no longer get a bank loan, start a business, buy an apartment, or even send your children to a private school.
Liu Hu is among a tiny minority of people who have dared to criticize the system, which some are calling a digital dictatorship.
I worry, because I think many people like me will be deprived of individual freedoms, and all of us will live with restrictions of one kind or another.
After our meeting, Liu Hu learned that his name had been removed from the blacklist, but he still has a long way to go if he doesn't want to languish at the bottom of the social credit hierarchy.
That's what the plan is. I've said it before, China is the blueprint for communism. Extreme global communism will be the name of the game. It might not look like that at first in America, because all they need to do is use mind control to convince people that it's not communism. They could tell them it's whatever they want. They could tell them that it's still a democracy, and they'll believe it. They'll word it differently. They'll show you images of the American flag on the digital ID. And these people will say, it's not what you're saying it is. It's just a more convenient way. Hey, we could stop all this stuff at the border. Hey, all of a sudden, we could stop human trafficking if we have digital IDs. It'll be marketed however they need to market it to the sheeple to get them to agree with it. But make no mistake about it. The hell on earth that you saw in the Black Mirror clip, the hell on earth that I just showed you in China, that's what the world looks like. A world where you have to conform to what they tell you. And some people would say, well, it doesn't look that bad. I mean, everybody's just got to be nice and be positive. You mean everybody's got to be fake? And then the more tyranny the government shoves down your throat, you have to agree with. You have to smile and agree with it when the government comes to your door and tasers you in the balls. You have to agree with it when the government comes to your door and takes your children. Don't forget some of the documentaries I played over the years, which are available on the website, where you could just see what communism looks like. And children, your children, belong to the state. in global communism. They don't belong to you, which means the government will have the ability to come to your door and remove your children from the household. Not because you did anything wrong, not because of some situation where you might say, hey, let's get the kids out of the house because the parents are abusive. No. Because the state deems you not responsible enough to raise your children because you disagree with the state. And they don't want your child growing up learning about God. They don't want your child growing up learning about how dangerous and tyrannical the government is. They want your children growing up loving and worshiping the government as if it is God. And that's what the future holds with the digital ID. I thank everybody for being here. I hope you're all doing well. God bless you and your families, as always.